Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Most of the time on this channel, I like to try to spit game, mindset training, mind, body, and soul programming, daily discipline. Sometimes I just like to tell some stories. So let's just get into one of those times. It was the early 90s. I was living in Santa Cruz, California, in the Central Coast, in a neighborhood called the Beach Flats. And the Beach Flats was separated into two sections by the San Lorenzo River. They had the hooker side and the crack side. I've talked about this neighborhood before in a couple other my videos, and the Beach Flats barrio was controlled by the Mexican mafia. And it was heavily controlled by them. It was an open air drug market. There was the Surenos and another gang that were there. The other gang was a local Santa Cruz Mexican gang that had been there since the 50s. And they shared turf with the Surenos and got along for the most part. Never really got into any fights or rumbles, but you know, they coexisted together. And there were probably, I think in the one article I read in the newspaper, they said that there was over 1,000 validated gang members in my neighborhood on the crack side, with each one of those gang members, those validated gang members, having up to 4 associates each. So that's about 4,000 people in a 6 block by 6 block area that are all gang banging all day long, up to no good. I moved down there and didn't really feel like I was gonna stay there for long or fit in. It was such a wild scene, but I had really nowhere else to go. It was the only place I could afford. So I was gonna be there for a few months, at least until my lease ran out, and maybe find some other place. But I ended up living down there for a long time, mainly because I was embraced by the community. These guys really became my best friends and my only friends. But it was a violent area, and I'll be honest, it traumatized me. And it's weird because I have a lot of bad memories from those days of violence. But I miss those days. It's hard to explain. I don't miss watching people die. But there's a certain camaraderie in battle, I guess, that it's hard to find anywhere else. I saw a lot of murders, and I kind of got overwhelmed by murders during that time of my life. And even after I moved out of the flats and moved down to Los Angeles, I kept like getting caught up in just the wrong place at the wrong time. I just kind of got overwhelmed, and that's where some of my PTSD started to come from. It wasn't just one scenario, and it wasn't just a few scenarios with one that finally broke the straw that broke the camel's back. It just kept happening, and I wasn't able to get over the last one, and it would happen again and again and again and again and again and again. When I first moved to the flats, there was this guy that used to sit on my front porch, wear this black hoodie. On real hot days, he'd be in a tank top or whatever, and he had cool punk rock tattoos. And he was a Mexican guy, and he was with the Surenos. He was pretty active in their group. He lived over on the hooker side, but hung out in the crack side, and he was into all kinds of activity, a variety of different stuff. And he was a nice guy, and he was really into punk rock music, into skateboards and surfing and all that kind of stuff, because it's California. There's that scene there, and we're living 2 blocks off the beach. But he was also a hardened criminal. This guy, in and out of prison all the time, had all the connections you can think of. I got to know him just because he spent a lot of time on my front porch in my apartment building. And I'm social. I would always be smoking joints out there, and me and him would pass back joints, and that's really was the nature of our relationship, was just to smoke pot together on my front porch, and we would talk about tattoos and music and you know, whatever. These surfer guys, they talk about surfing a lot and the waves. It's not a conversation I would really be able to engage in, but it's interesting because this guy was kind of like a fucking oceanographer, you know, like he was a scientist for the ocean. He knew about the swells and the waves and about the currents and about all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, how do you learn that shit? And he's just like, well, you just are out in the ocean enough, you get, it's like learning the woman that you sleep with. You sleep with her for 10 years, you know everything about her. He's like, it's the same with the ocean. We'd have great conversations. One day I was walking home from the bar because I was going down to the bar 7 days a week, and I hung out at this little dive bar downtown, and the Flats is really not that far from downtown. It was better than just to take a cab, even on a bicycle. They'll get you for a DUI on a fucking bicycle. I've known people. I had a buddy of mine on his birthday riding a bicycle home from the bar, thinking that that was the right thing. He had a car. He's like, I don't want to catch a DUI. He didn't want to take a cab because he didn't live far. It's a fucking nice beach town. Rides the bicycle home drunk. I don't know how they caught him, but they pulled him over and gave him a DUI, took him to jail. So I was just like, fuck that shit, man, I'll walk. I always walked. And I walk up the block, and there's a line of cop cars with their lights flashing out in front of my apartment building. My apartment building stood alone. If you know Beach Flats, Santa Cruz, I was on Raymond Street. My apartment was next to the community garden on Raymond. And on the other side of the apartment building is a basketball court. And they, at least at the time I lived there, they had a trailer in there that was set up as an office for the Barrios Unidos organization. They had a chick that worked for that was really pretty. But the building stood alone and the cops were all lined up on the street. So I knew something had happened. A bunch of cop cars. It was probably not good. I get up to the community garden and there was just one lone homie there, Surenos, just kind of posting up, checking out the scene. And I got up to him and he said, yo, it's that guy Crow. And he said it in Spanish, and I don't remember what the name of Crow is in Spanish. It's like Cuervo or something. But he was like, yeah, it's Crow, because I called him Crow. It didn't even register, I guess, at first. I walked up to the building and they had that yellow tape across the front. I told the cop I live in the building. There's chalk drawn on the front steps. They had fucking little chalk lines drawn out in the street, little markers for where some shells were, shell casings were. And it turns out it was my homie, the little hoodie motherfucker, the punk rocker, my surfer buddy, hung out on my steps every day. I was just like, man, you know, I mean, I don't know what this guy's up to. It's not my business. But when one of your friends die, and I looked forward to seeing him, and it was just, he always had good pot to smoke. Sometimes we smoked my pot. It's not like I was always smoking his, but I really enjoyed hanging out with him. It was like a daily thing. It was just part of my routine. This guy was just part of my life. And then he's gone. And it was weird because this guy became like a ghost in my head. Every time I would walk up the block, I lived there for years after that, I saw all kinds of bullshit. Car bombings, stabbings, you name it. But very often, when I would walk up the block, typically at night and alone, I would see a dude with a hoodie sitting there on my steps. I could even smell the weed. The pungent odor, the fucking skunk weed, real good ass weed. He always called it Indo. That was just what he called it. He thought it was all from Indonesia. It didn't matter. You could tell him this is from Humboldt County. He'd be like, it's the Indo. Whatever you want to call it, buddy. It's good. I could smell it and see him. As I'd get closer, it's like he would just disappear. It's like a ghost. It was just a fucking hallucination. I had this weird habit every time I would walk up the steps into my building. This twisted kind of habit of trying to look at the spots on the concrete and see which ones were blood spots, if they were his blood on the concrete. I could always find spots, and they would always look like blood, no matter what it was. You know, it's weird how shit like that happens so much, and it's such an awful existence down there in some ways, but you know, in some ways I miss it. It's hard to explain. Thanks for watching.